This podcast is made possible by McDSP, makers of the award-winning APB-16 and APB-8 hardware and professional audio plugins. Learn more at mcdsp.com.
Hey, it's Larry Crane. Welcome to the Tape Op Podcast. In keeping with their long-standing partnership, Panda Bear and Sonic Boom, also known as Noah Lennox and Pete Kemper, have teamed up again to create Reset, a collection of songs that started with Sonic Boom sending song-length 2-track samples pulled from his vinyl collection to Panda Bear to write to. The result is an album that sounds like summer, with lyrical themes of hope and the need for common ground. Noah and Pete caught up with Geoff Stanfield from their homes in Portugal to discuss. Enjoy.
One is bread is another's tax. Lifelong sitting in the bank. Sparks one stepping on the gas. Sparks one with
I get bombarded with requests to do these interviews and talk about records, and I would say, the majority of I pass on, but I really love, first of all, I really love both the work that you guys do individually and otherwise, but this record really, I love it. I mean, I have to say that it was a record that felt extremely familiar to me in so many ways and totally fresh at the same time, which was really nice. And I found myself listening to it, not just as research to speak with you guys, but to, just because I really dug it. And so thank you. I mean, you guys have collaborated in the past on both Tomboy and Panda Bear Meets the Grim Reaper, but this new record, Reset, it has a bit of a different bent.
Well, I feel like we've just sort of since we met and started working together, we've just kind of gotten closer in, both personally and creatively, I guess. So it just felt like an organic kind of tightening the whole time. So with Tomboy, I had recorded all that stuff myself, for better or worse, and handed off the stems essentially to Pete to mix. Then Grim Reaper, we kind of started from the beginning, but it was still all my stuff. And then this one sort of, it felt like the logical next step of like both of us contributing songs and arrangements and just sort of collaborating completely on the whole thing.
Yeah. It was, I mean, the inception of it was maybe, let's see, and I had this idea about, I just noticed from listening, I still notice on some songs, I still hear it the whole time. I'm like, ooh, the start of that song is such a good loop that I thought it might be fun to try and put something together, just, simple 2-track looping up of stuff and, making 4 minutes out of the loop, more or less, or something, 4 or 5 minutes out of the loop, and see what happened. It wasn't something we sort of set out to do on purpose. It sort of was just something that happened sort of organically a little bit. And yeah, so I didn't actually, I don't know why, it took me a while to send the stuff to Noah, because I wasn't really sure if he'd be into it or not, because I knew that, it had a certain, the stuff was from a certain era, and I didn't know how much he would resonate with it or not, but clearly he did.
It wasn't like, let's make an album. It was really, this was sort of, I think it was sort of the first summer of COVID. So somewhere in there, maybe towards the end of the first summer of COVID. And I found that working was kind of like the best way that I could get my mind off, or maybe the only way I could get my mind off sort of the spinning and the chaos outside. So I really sort of leaned into that. I was just kind of taking anything that came across my path. But when Pete was like, I have these loops, you want to try something on them? I was like just so ready and so excited to dig into it.
Pete, did you literally just go, were you just on a sort of a listening bent that, going down a path in terms of, I mean, I do this all the time. Like I'll just kind of go down a rabbit hole in terms of my listening and what I'm into at the moment, and then kind of find myself just immersed. I'm just peeling back, just one thing leads to another, and I'm exploring a new genre or whatever. I mean, is that sort of what happened with this, or were you going specifically to like, oh, I like this tune, or I mean, because some of these are, I mean, these are a lot of tracks from the '60s, and I don't know if every single track on the record started with a loop. Some of them are more obvious than others, and we'll talk about some of the songs specifically later. But
when one of the reasons was, of course, I mean, COVID was a big part of this whole record, and in different ways. But initially, I mean, everyone had a lot of the time on their hands, and there's only so much you can watch on Netflix or whatever. It really gets very limited very quickly, for me anyway. So I got a lot of records, and when I moved to Portugal, I brought them here, and it was nice going back through records I'd had for years, but things that were always, things like Eddie Cochran or the Everly Brothers, which always just, always meant a lot to me, really. So I was listening to those records, and it was a slowly dawning process that there were lots of these tracks where I really thought the intro, even if the intro didn't really have that much to do with the song itself, like I'm trying to think, well, the one Living in the After is like, sort of made it out two different parts of that, an intro, and then it was lucky because it was like it was that instrumental break in that song with the strings. So just through messing around with it, really. But yeah, it was through having a lot of time and going back through listening to all my records again and going through my records and seeing, I even had some records I'd bought that I'd never listened to. So, or I'd listened to only once and I couldn't remember why. So I was going through all this stuff. And of course, the records I only listened to once, there was a reason for it when I listened to it again.
On the carousel, and they keep on ringing the final bell. I will tell if you won't tell. It isn't an easy sell, living in the after. Living, but you just want more, but you just want more, but you just want more. You got me looking. Searching, but you can't be sure, but you can't be sure. So you take a dip in the deepest end, taking it around the bend, waiting for you to say when, living in the after.
On a tune like Edge of the Edge, where you've got this Randy and the Rainbow sample from Denise, how do you completely reimagine a song that's so established? I mean, you recreated a melody for this and just reimagined a song based on this sort of intro. What's your approach on that?
Well, most of the stuff I didn't, even though I felt like it was kind of familiar, I didn't, like the melody of the original wasn't in my brain. Okay. So I kind of just, and Pete sent way more loops than we ended up using. Like, I feel like there was like 40 of them or something. So I would just choose the ones where, like, when I listened to it the first or second time, I would already kind of have like an idea. the ones that really just sort of like appear to me really quickly that those are the ones that I would work on. So I wish I could say like there was like a master plan or some kind of like blueprint that I had, but really it was just sort of like following my nose and just seeing what happened. And if something started to happen, you just kind of keep going down that road and see what happens.
You took it out, but you can put it back. You took it out, but you can put it back again. You took a swig and then you take a crack. You're running quick, but you're running off the track. One piece to break the fall, one wave to take us all to the shore. Can't say it's what you're barking for. It's forever at the push of a button.
What I'm hearing is that you weren't necessarily familiar with a lot of these tunes.
Not familiar enough that hearing the intro kind of put the whole song in.
And even,
Right.
you know what, even if you know, a friend of mine, for example, who would know Three Steps to Heaven really well, he loves that sort of music of that era. He said it sounds familiar, but he couldn't place it. And I was like, you'll kick yourself when I tell you what it is. But I think I mean, people would have figured out what the samples are because the songs start just the same as the originals did. It's just what happens afterwards goes. But I think that what Noah did that was really awesome, I think, and we both do it anyway in our music, is where we sometimes use quite simple structures to the songs, but create an actual song on top of it with sort of sleight of hand a little bit and moving around, making something appear that it actually, or making something actually have something to it that's to do with the arrangement, essentially, and the way that it changes over the arrangement over a pretty static loop. And I know when he started sending me the tracks back, one by one, I mean, each one as they came through, I was just like, because what he did his vocal on it, and there was just the loop. Originally, there was just the loops and his vocal. And I mean, in essence, you know, the song was there already. It had already made this transition to where it was clearly something totally different and was an original work.
Right. And so, Noah, were you taking the initial loops and seeds from Peter and then creating melodies, vocals, and then keys and et cetera? You just sort of going for it, or did you guys kind of go back and forth on that stuff? What was the process like in terms of getting to the final stage?
The first wave was just me doing vocals, and he would send me an audio file of the loop. There's a couple of the tracks that were a little more involved than just like one loop the whole time. Like Living in the After goes back and forth between two different parts, and I think there may be another one like that. But they were of various lengths, the different loops that he would send me, or like the compositions of loops that he would send me. And I don't really know why, but I felt like I should try to figure out a song that would kind of gracefully fit into the exact length of the loop that he sent. Like I didn't want to chop it up at all, or so something like Living in the After was a little tricky because it's just it moves like in really odd ways. Like it kind of goes to what I would call the chorus like really early. But I thought that sort of challenge was fun and kind of cool, just to try to like, okay, this song is going to be 4 minutes and 13 seconds. How can I write something that really fits perfectly into that, or sort of complements whatever I felt was happening in the sequence. Everything else, all the percussion, keyboards, everything else we did together. kind of after I'd done all the vocal stuff for all the songs.
I was going to say, Living in the After, I think the arrangement of that one was you did that. I put something together that had the intro part and that string runaway bit. And I'm pretty sure you chopped that one up, but I'm trying. I don't think there's the only other one where it's sort of, I might have had where it had two samples that it went between. We took out the sample out of.
Yeah, maybe Living in the After was like me trying to do something that I that felt really unnatural and try to make it feel natural. It was like a weird kind of challenge mode or something. Sounds like me.
Before Pete jumped on, Noah, you and I were talking about the theme of the record lyrically, because it's a very hopeful sounding record. I mean, sonically, it's very uplifting for the most part, and hopeful sounding to me.
Yeah, we wanted it to be, and we had a lot of conversations before and during making the thing of like addressing this kind of stuff. Yeah, I just feel like being cynical, as dark as things seem to be, it just doesn't seem to be like helpful at all. So I'd rather try to induce some type of like positive energy, and not in like a naive way or like a kumbaya way, just like being cynical isn't going to solve anything. So I guess I just feel like trying to be hopeful or trying to think about ways out of this just seems more productive, I guess. But I think perhaps like the broad stroke of the thing lyrically is really thinking about how we seem to be, as I told you before Pete got on. It seems like we're kind of branching off into ever more exclusive groups of people, and like defining ourselves by like just the really small details. Whereas I feel like the record is trying to suggest at various points that there's way more that we have in common than that's different about us. Though that may take a little like thinking about to parse it, but I think it's a choice that we can make to focus on all those things that are common to us. And I think the record hopes that we try to do that.
I think also because it was done in COVID, and when we were doing this, I mean, we were both, I mean, having worked with Noah before, it was different. I mean, we were both crushed by not just COVID, but other world events, let's say, without naming any names. I think we can all guess what I'm talking about. But it's like, as Noah says, what you do, you bitch about it or you try and do something positive. It really is the only answer. And as the songs for me started coming through from Noah, it was clear to me that lyrically he was a super focused place, and it was like medicine coming through as the songs came through. It was really uplifting, and I think once we started growing a little bunch of them, we realized that we could, that it was heading in this sort of really positive, medicinal sort of direction that we should probably try and home in on, and just try and project that as much as possible, and give people something with no delusions that it's going to fix anything. It plays into that, and I feel that a lot of the issues that we're concerned about are we can deal with them, but most of these things were created by all of us, and it's all of us who kind of have to do our little bit, whatever that little bit is, just like the little bit we did that got us there, even though we might not have even known we were doing it or been totally aware of it. So yeah, it was, I think we really wanted something to that would lift people, but also point them in a positive direction with it, rather than just like, let's party, but let's do something good while we're partying. I think it was a common feeling amongst people in the arts at that point, because they were all put on hold straight away, pretty much. There was a feeling of, there was a question about how consequential is it to actually, you're in the arts. I mean, you know, you're not in a hospital here. You're not, you know, what are you actually doing? So I think it was really nice to, because, you know, I believe that music is really important, you know, that it's for what it does for people's mindset and how it gets people through stuff sometimes and how it gets them through tough times. And it was always like that for me. There were always some records that really just got me through tough times and could, some of the inspirations for it, like the ska, rock steady stuff, I put that music on and it just lifts me straight away every time. And it just has this awesome energy where they were going through really tough times in Jamaica, tough times with cops, gangsters, you name it, inflation, shortages. And they're talking about it, but in this super positive way. So it's, it was, you know, I think we realized that we could cover that and still do it in a really vibey, up tempo sort of way.
How are you guys working, like in terms of the technology? Or what platforms are you guys using? Are you using file share services? Are you close enough where you guys can run over to each other's places and sit down and work, or what are you guys doing?
I used this program called Luna because I have a universal audio sound device guy interface. And it's just kind of simple, basic, gets the job done. And we would always send just audio files to each other. And then I think it was mixed by Pete in Pro Tools.
Yeah. And we're close enough that we can work together. I mean, we're 30 minutes or so from each other. And we did do that. And especially, I mean, for me, particularly being able to go into Lisbon during the lockdown and actually do something, move around a little bit and have an excuse. Because here you could, if you were working, you had the right to be out doing it. But it was just a really interesting period because Lisbon, which is quite a busy city, was dead as a dodo, as you can imagine, like all the cities were, I guess, especially big cities like that. So it was nice to be able to do the stuff together and but of course we were sending stuff, you know, back and forth as well digitally to each other.
Let's go through a few of the tracks on the record, and how about Getting to the Point?
You think that was the first one, right?
I do. I think it was. I think it was.
It's the only one that features live drums. You can't really hear them, but they're there. I did I played kit on that. Yeah, that kind of starts off the whole, like, sort of the broad stroke of the album lyrically, I feel like, that I was talking about. That's a pretty good, like, poster child for that one. Just feeling frustrated that people aren't getting along and trying to see a way through it, I guess.
That was one actually that we probably added least of all the tracks. That might be closest to the sample and Noah's vocal. I know there's a few extra little bits, but that's quite a lot of the meat of that one. I mean, as I say, when the tracks came through with his vocal and what he'd arranged as a song with his vocal on the, it was already clear. I mean, you could have actually kind of released it at that point, really. It was nice to be able to try these extra things and try the percussion stuff, and I got a bunch of guiros, and we sort of, I guess I'd listened to this ska and stuff since I was a kid, since I was like 13. And it suddenly clicked on me when I was listening. Oh my God, a lot of my favorite tracks always have this superb sort of mechanical rhythmic guiro action to it. Makes the whole thing feel like it's a sort of a system that's working. Noah played the guiro on most of the tracks. I think there's a couple of guiros on things like Danger. It has alternating pushing and pulling guiros in places.
When I got a chance to do my thing, sink or swim. Getting to the point, can't stand it, just can't stand it, to drop a bomb. Getting to the point you want it, to get along.
How about I mean, I'm looking at this list of songs. I really love all of them. It's just such a good top to bottom piece of work. But how about Danger? Now, my guess was that this was an Everly Brothers sample. Just I'm not sure, and I actually went through on I was going down a list of
Love of My Life.
What's that?
This song. Yeah.
Is that the track? Okay. Well, I just, there's so many Everly Brothers tracks that have that guitar figure,
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about that one, Danger.
Well, that one to me that's the one that I thought we did first. But it's just like it's a love song, but kind of approaching it from the opposite end, not the beginning, sort of like the end, I guess. Or instead of looking from the beginning to the future, it's kind of looking from the future to the past, I guess. But it's a love song, really, at heart.
All that you do for me, can't you see what you do to me? Into the air like a falling leaf, got in a twist, but it's probably brief. Out to the edge of the subtle core, when will you come back to me? Only a limb with a broken bow. When can I give it to you?
That's one that we might have done the most on, pretty much. And when we had the tracks, we started to get the percussion stuff and started to, because we really didn't know what we were doing, and it was tough. It felt tough doing it. It really did. It was nice to be doing it, but it still felt tough. And I think a lot of the time I know this is for a tape op interview, but we were, I summarized it by, no, it's okay, which mic do you want to use? And I would say, which one's set up? We were very, we also use, I'd got a new synth that I thought would be juicy, Arturia Micro Freak. And I purposefully not got it out of the box, or not delved into it. I wanted the first time we used it to be in the studio, and to any juice that we found straight away could get used straight away. And sure enough, preset one, as we turned on the machine, started playing something to Danger, and we were like, okay, preset one, that's perfect. So which I don't think is either of our go-to mode normally, but I mean, that synth, we might have just particularly got lucky with what they put early on in some of the presets. But yeah, I'm not a preset guy at all, but it was really strange. And that one has the Noah did that really cool echoing synth part that sort of speaks back and forth, sort of pizzicatos almost back and forth to each other, which is and the way the guiros work in that song, that's the one with the two guiros in part of it, where they push and pull against each other, and it just sometimes, Jim Dickinson said, if you've got the song, nothing else actually really matters. You can hardly fuck it up. And actually, it'll just get more magical because it'll just inspire, anyone who comes near it will be pulled into its magnetism. And I don't know why some songs you get lucky with that. And I think that was one of those, that one particularly, for me anyway, it's just like,
all that you do for me, can't you see what you do to me? I'm glad for the day, even when it's gray. Show me a place where my thoughts can go. Play to the end of a brittle tale. When will you play it for me? And to the end of this cold landscape, I'll keep coming back for more of your danger. When your grip get a hold of me, I'm in danger. When a grip get a hold of me, I've got to get back to that.
Yeah, and just real quick before we gotta go, how about Living in the After? That one is a real world of its own.
Well, Pete's been trying to get me to do a song with strings for a while, and he finally cracked the code. Yeah, I guess Pete was right that this is the one I probably futzed with the file that he sent me to try to set it up in a way that didn't seem obvious or something, and then trying to navigate like a blueprint for a song that would fit into that template. And it was I'd say that was the most challenging one, not only in terms of the structure and the arrangement, but also just sort of like the mood of it. Felt like it was difficult for me to figure out a way into it, I guess. That wasn't one of the ones that I, like, in an afternoon I just sort of whipped out.
And it has that I think that's the one that isn't, it's the only one that doesn't actually go on a grid. I went out of my way for everything to be nice and grid friendly. But that one, the two samples have they've got play in them, and it's kind of part of the magic of the thing. But it definitely made it a little tougher to do stuff.
You can hear the tempo slow down when it goes into the chorus, just ever so slightly. It's probably like an eighth of a BPM or something like that. But you can hear it kind of like suddenly sort of like lurch a little bit. Sorry, Pete, I cut you off.
On that one, and also you did it straight away on Go On, where, it had this repetitive, relentless riff, and at a certain point, taking that out, for before the last section, just delivers so much energy or release or something after it. And you did it on Living in the After as well, where there's a certain point you're like, you know what, at this point, and before it goes back into the vocal, let's just cut it here. And those sort of fakies, those sort of drops, it's amazing how powerful and what energy they can bring. Sometimes just taking a lot of the stuff out for a second is really nice. It's a nice shock to the system.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, thanks guys.
Thanks, Geoff.
Thanks again thanks for this record, and we'll be in touch.
Thank you.
Thanks for talking to us, man.
Thanks for listening. Find us online at tapeop.com, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Until next time.